Hey guys, it's Tizzy Time, and today I have a special guest with me, and we're going to be discussing the election. We're going to be discussing the health of America. We're just going to be talking about all various topics. And of course, we have our guest here, VJ, aka Victor Jones, who's going to give us the male perspective and the male view of some topics and some things that's going on right now. So I want to just give a big round of applause, excuse me, to VJ for being my guest today. Thank you so much, VJ. If you want to introduce yourself, please do so now. Tell the audience a little about yourself and, what we're doing here today.
All right, thank you, Chantizzy, for having me on again. Once again, my name is Victor. I'm the host of the Liquor Talk podcast where we have real grown folks conversations with some shots of liquor involved. Of course, we cover everything under the sun, from black culture to dating to relationships, you name it. Whatever you want to talk about, whatever what you want to hear. And also, it's a safe space for people to tell their stories about their podcast. Once again, Chantizzy, thank you for having me on your platform.
Last time we were talking, we were discussing, just going forward and having a conversation about the health of this country and what happened after the election, the results. I mean, what did you think about it, VJ? I mean, we got Trump another 4 years, our first convicted felon as a president, our first convicted felon as a president. And we also have our first president that did not serve 2 consecutive terms. And then we have our oldest president. What do we think about that? Like, I mean, does that speak to what America represents, or are we just in this place now where we're putting the health of our country first and, everything else second?
You know what? I'm not surprised about the election. I'm not surprised that he won because I knew my black folks we were gonna hold it down, but I just couldn't see white America and Latino America getting behind a black woman. So that part it really doesn't surprise me one bit. The health of the country, it's about to get crazy, but as long as you know your mindset that we're gonna be all right and you're gonna do what you can take to make things happen. I don't care who in office. If you got that hustles mentality to go make some shit happen, no matter the circumstances, we'll be all right. And plus, another thing I didn't notice is how dumb this election is making the people look.
Oh
Because
my
I've
goodness,
seen
right?
people going on social media talking about Trump's elected, all hell gonna break loose, all that stuff. I'm like, I could tell y'all did not pay attention to state and local politics because your local politicians, that's the ones that matter. The state and local election levels, um, that's the one that really matters. Because what Trump is gonna do is go over a lot of y'all heads. Y'all not even in the tax bracket he's gonna affect. So
I agree with that entirely, and I think that's a lot of things that people don't realize as well. I've seen a few TikTok posts, a few tweets, even a few threads posts just going forward and talking about, like, the status and the class, his voting populations, and they're like, he has these low level voters, or these voters who are more so in the middle class or close to the working class, people who have to, for lack of a better term, get it out the mud to get it done. And it's so funny that within his policies or within his tax breaks, it seems as though the man who owns the business and is more so the founder, and those who are in that C class level would be those who would be more prone to his policies than that of someone who clocks in and clocks out, works a 9 to 5, blue collar worker, for example. It's just so crazy to see how many people voted against their best interests, right? Very similar to, salts for slugs, or, things of that nature, to see how, he ultimately went forward and just decided, like, all right, we have this voting population that I may not relate with, but I'm going to have a rhetoric that makes it seem that this is the demographic I can relate to. I mean, this man is a billionaire. This man's father was from money as well. It's just so funny to see how many people he appeals to. And 9 times out of 10, Donald Trump probably never had to clock in for a job, the same as a person whose mom was a homemaker or whose dad, worked 10 plus hour shifts but wasn't getting the salary that matched. So it's just so interesting to see how many people are on this side of being, I guess, slugs for salt versus, of course, voting in their best interests. And I feel like we've seen that. I mean, we've had a population of 50% within the Hispanic slash Latino community vote in their interest for Trump. We had women, white women specifically, 52% who went forward and voted against their best interests. We have Latin women, almost 40 something percent, who also voted and, against their interests. And it's interesting to see. I can't wait to see what that looks like in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because, something that's something, excuse me, it's something that's super interesting. And I don't know what the fate of our country means, or what that looks like now that, Donald Trump is back in office. Because if we look at his policies, I mean, on one end, it's like, okay, on an entrepreneurial mindset, it's like, yeah, he did what he needed to do. But the same question is, did he do that in a good way and it worked out, or did he do it for his own benefit? And if he would have did another 4 years, what did that mean for the economy, society, the health, and the discourse that this country has? So it's interesting to see. I'm wondering what that looks like. I mean, of course, Black people always vote in the interest of their race, but also against their Black people vote in their best interest. So it's odd to see. I didn't think that Kamala would lose ultimately, but well, excuse me, Kamala, but it was shocking to say the least. Um, yeah, it's a lot of policies out there that are questionable.
Yes, it's definitely a lot of policies that are definitely questionable. And honestly, if I'm realistically thinking about it, and I hate to play devil's advocate, which is what I'm going to do when I talk to another friend of mine who's known for politics because he wants me to do something with him like in the coming days. But you got to be realistic about it. Like, we knew the black people were gonna hold it down.
As
We knew the
always,
black
we
men and
always
black
do,
women were gonna
right?
hold it down. We knew it. But can the other races of people, because you're asking the same country that voted against Hillary back in 2016. So it's like, if they want to put a white woman in office, what makes you think they were going to realistically put a black woman in office?
I definitely could agree with that. That was actually my first thought. But the way they were pushing her so hard in like the media, just going forward and, having all of these people of influence at the rallies, for example, Beyonce in Texas, Cardi B in Wisconsin, I believe Glorilla also in Wisconsin, so it just poses the question of like, what is influence nowadays, right? Because you have stars like Taylor Swift, you have stars like Beyonce, you have stars like Kerry Washington and Tony Goldwyn who are, supporting this woman and going forward and being advocates for her, her being in the presidential election as the first woman. It poses the question ultimately, what becomes of popularity and influence? What becomes of people having their ear to the streets when it comes to politics? In 5 years, are we going to be looking at celebrities as people we don't even want in decision making when it comes to politics, or will that be the decision making? Donald Trump opened a whole lot of doors for when it comes to influence, right? And then also going forward and
Mm-hmm.
using his celebrity to get to a point of being able to be open with these messages. So it makes me wonder, what is our future in society? Will we be having more people who may not have the qualities within government and law running for president? Or are we going to go forward and get more people who are just diving into the element of new practices to reach their audience? So, for example, Kai Cenat, he's very big in streaming right now. In 5 years, will we be able to see our presidential election on a stream? Will we be going forward and having,
I,
yeah, go ahead.
I would be shocked if Kasana. I've watched some of his streams. He don't seem like the presidential type as well.
He
And
doesn't.
also the Democrats, they failed to market their they failed like because I looked at that too. Why are you having Cardi B and Glorilla
I was a bit
and
confused
Megan
at
and
that
people
too.
like that
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Wisconsin? Like, how many black people do you know in Wisconsin? You
Not
gotta
many.
have if you're gonna use the celebrities people in that state can relate to.
Right.
Because then if you would have used Cardi B, Glorilla, those ladies down in the South, okay, you're talking. But to go up north with those ladies, man, come on, you need your country music singer or some other celebrity that's from
Right.
that area who can speak to those people. So that's where the Democrats dropped the ball.
I can definitely agree with that. And I mean, like, it was something that really wasn't relevant, right? I mean, we all love Glorilla, excuse me. We love singing the 7 p.m. Friday. But in my case, I felt like this was like you said, a ball dropper because it's like, read the room, you know? The future of our country is in our hands, not only for young Black, educated professionals or those who are within the Black community, but this is a time for everybody to really be knowledgeable in politics, especially in a society where I feel like the education and the knowledge of politics has consistently dropped the ball, you know? So it's just crazy to see if that is something that's going to continue. Will it be the push to further, have these models and go forward and push these into something that becomes like a normalcy? Or will it become something that's like, why do we need this? And look at how two young professionals are talking about it, right? We didn't need that. That was inappropriate. That was kind of like, for lack of a better term, counterproductive because it's like, okay, we're trying to talk about reproductive rights. We're discussing the high price of groceries. We're discussing the border, the security of border patrol and, the stability of it. And now we have, a music break and we're dancing and gyrating. It kind of seemed like the ultimate area of pandering. And ultimately, I didn't like it. Um, no offense to Howard University or any HBCUs, but I felt like it was performative there as well. Um, and it's nothing wrong with that. I just feel as though like a time and a place, right? I thought it was a great display of the
Mhm.
D9. I thought it was a great display of a historically Black college. I love that that was our alma mater. But I feel like at the times where we really need to be honing in and locking in and understanding what the messages is, we kind of drop the ball, which allows other people, whether they be total right wingers, whether they be centrists, to have this narrative of the Democrats that everything is performative, that everything is a show, right? And it makes me, as a young professional who will eventually be making the decisions for the United States, right? Because eventually that'll be us moving forward. And it makes me question, like, where's the stability of our country? Where is the knowledge when it comes to going forward and really being educated on what a politician can do? Like, even in the beginning of our podcast, when we started talking, you said something that resonated so well. Like, and it's ultimately like, do you know you have to be in tune with your local government? Do you know how state law
Mhm.
works? A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't know their local congressman, their local councilman, their local senator. And it poses the question of if that is something that's so hard to look up, are we going forward and actually looking up who would be the best choice for this country? So these are all questions that we have to really unpack, not only as young Black Americans, but the future of this country. I mean, baby boomers at one point had a economical crash, and they had to go forward and push, and really have a stable living to be able to provide for us, the future of our society. And now it's like a house is $700,000. 60 years ago, 70 years ago, people were buying homes for, $5,000 down. So it poses the question of what does the health of this country look like? What will groceries look like? I mean, we're paying $6 for eggs, damn it. When does when does the cross bear, like when does it become too much to deal with? And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing in this society. Like I said, if it takes 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, I'm really interested to see how the economy will shift, either falter or fluctuate. So I'm ready to see.
I feel that. I feel that. Honestly, I'm just ready for all this shit to crash because they don't. Because I know the car market and the house market, they both about to crash because shit is so sky high. So it's like y'all need to do something about that while y'all trying to, you know.
I mean,
And also,
interest
I
rate
know
is
these
7%. Like, that's crazy, you know?
shit.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, so that's just the craziest part about it at all. I mean, I read a report the other day that they said home ownership for some may not be until 55 years old. And I just think that's bananas, especially when retirement at one point was the age 55, you know? Retirement now is climbing closer to 70. The life expectancy for anyone is now 77. So it becomes a question of what are we in society doing to live our life? Are we just going forward and living in the stigma of being a homeowner at 50 to enjoy the home for 5 years, 6 years when we decide to retire? Or are we in a society where we'll be able to take vacations 3 times a year, and have a house where we won't feel like we are, breaking down or being in a place of not understanding what there is to do? So these are all the questions that I have posed as a young individual. Um, Also makes me question the security of the medical industry. What does that mean for big pharma? What does that mean for these big corporations? What does that mean for the food? If food is being cheaper, are we now producing food at a unhealthy rate that, we're eating super hormone pump food because, we don't want to go forward and pay the additional $2 for whatever we need to pay for? What does that mean for the education system? One thing I really am afraid about is what that means for a lot of these schools in the southern states, that are low tiered in education amongst, demographically amongst the US. So I'm not saying I'm nervous, but I'm just really worried for the country's stability, and what they have going on moving forward. I mean, big shifts to Washington. We have a majority Republican Senate. We have a majority Republican House now too. And it's just interesting to see. And I think the governors are leading Republican too. So it's just crazy to see how so many people claim they went out to vote this election, and a lot of the local offices are taking control are unfortunately are Republican this time around. So it's like, did we go to the polls? Did we show up? I know black men and black women did 98% for black women. And then I believe 70 something percent for black men, or 86% for black men, if I'm not wrong. So, I mean, the black women and men, they did what they needed to do at the polls, which definitely doesn't reflect how the timelines are with the conversation surrounding black men and black women, right? So it's nice to see that togetherness that they claim we don't have, the community they claim we don't have. It was nice to see, black people show out this election, for lack of a better term. Um, and I
Yeah.
want us to show up in every other way, in the future, when it comes to any conversations, any discussions, any rhetoric, any progression for our demographic. So just hoping that continues. I thought, for all the bad, that was something that was actually pretty good to see.
Yeah, that was definitely pretty good to see us show up for to come out and vote. But I do need more of us to go out and also to vote. And also, once again, like I said earlier, people just need to be educated on their voting and stuff. And also, I need people on social media to quit acting like this the end all be all. Like
Right. Oh
we
my
done survived
gosh.
4 years of this man, and we'll survive another four.
I
Because
think so too.
honestly it's a good way because now you get to see racism come out. Now you get to see people who you see where they stand. So it's like now the mask is off. So hey, and you got to find the good out of it.
Right. It reminds me of the saying, fool me once, shame on you, right? But fool me twice, shame on me. I feel like Donald Trump has showed us his true colors, not only within his rhetoric, but also through his policies, things of that nature. I remember you had mentioned last time, with all the clemencies and all the pardons that he did during his presidency, were ultimately money grabs, right? You had mentioned that
Pretty
Kodak
much.
and Lil Wayne had to pay $1 million for their pardon. So it's just funny to see how so many people try to kind of be his ally in a way, or try to like, oh, Big Daddy Trump, like he's not so bad. Look, he gave us, $1,200. Look, he freed Kodak Black. So, I mean, very similar to the Republican Party, like I said about the pandering, just discussing, you know, things of that nature about how they go forward and deal with things. It's just funny to see our community, or some people of our community, some demographics within our community, be ultimately easily fooled by what's going on in society.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that now that we see it, and especially if there's something that he proves later down during his term this time around, I hope we're not blinded by it. I hope there's no trope or trope, for lack of a better term, going forward and being put on so that the wool is placed over those who voted for him's eyes. But these are all things that have to be told with time, and I think time will tell. It always does. Um, I know a lot of people were disappointed with his policies and his terms after the 2020 election, especially with the insurrection at the Capitol. But again, people are lying. So it's funny to see how many people were disgusted or upset with his policies or upset with his rhetoric. And, the polls reflected that he received the popular vote and the electoral college vote. So it's just odd to see. Like, it makes me as a citizen look at other citizens and other people in my community as, not Judases, but, ultimately you have to look at these people and make sure that they're not stab you in the back when it comes to real life issues, real policies that instill change, and also, the future of this country. So just interesting to see ultimately. I can't wait to see how many people had their foot in their mouths, ultimately.
Yeah, I feel like people definitely had their foot in their mouths, but guess what? They'll feel the effects sooner or later.
Oh, of
Just
course.
give it
That's always how it
time.
goes.
Give it time.
Yeah, man. And then, Kamala, she conceded, of course, and talked about, giving the election over to Trump and, congratulations on him winning. But I also didn't really like how she handled it ultimately. Like, I understand not speaking a night of. Excuse me, at least she conceded a day later. Trump still hasn't conceded from the 2020 election, but so it's
He might
just,
not ever concede
he
the
may never
election.
concede. He will definitely be in the history books as the president who will say he had 3 terms, rightfully. But even when the election results came out Tuesday, I feel like he climbed so fast, like very fast. And what I mean, he climbed fast is, you know, 30 minutes in, he had 100 electoral votes already. Kamala only had 23. And I was hoping it was very similar in, you know, I guess, trends like how Biden was. Because remember, in 2020, Biden started off super slow. It wasn't about to like an hour and a half in where he started like seeming like Trump and Biden would be in some real competition. So it was just crazy to see this time around. But like you said earlier, like, if they didn't vote for Hillary, what the hell made us think Kamala was going to win? And I guess that was me trying to see the maturity in this country, me trying to hope that maybe we progressed in a way that we can understand that women, especially black women, can run the country, can have a background in politics and be successful in it, twice as hard for half of what they had. And that's what was on full display, I believe, at this election. Donald Trump is a convicted felon, like I had stated earlier. Donald Trump is a part of so many scandals, from sex trafficking, excuse my language, all the way down to fraud and misappropriation of funds. This was anybody else of any other skin color, whether it be a black man, a black woman, an Indian man, an Indian woman, an Asian man, an Asian woman, whatever have you. And when I say Indian, I mean, of course, nationality, not race. If he also wanted to go forward and be, an indigenous American, all of these things, I feel like he would have been put through the wire. Every news source would be talking about how America is considering a convicted felon to run for president. We have convicted felons who can't even vote, right? Um, we have convicted felons who can never live a normal life and work a job. These are all things that are deterring them from being great. But we just allowed a white man to have 34 convictions, not even on a state or local level, but federally, both federally and state level, because of Letitia James. But where do we go to a point where we sit down and say, okay, this won't do? This is not something, no matter how close of a proximity or familiarity we have. When do we sit there and say this is not okay? I remember Governor Cuomo, New York's governor. went forward during the pandemic and resigned because of rumors being told about him or policies he were a part of that kind of like, you know, put New York in a bad light. He had to resign. Why is that not the case for Trump? Why does Trump get to go forward and live a successful life, have a successful campaign, and ultimately win a presidency when he has all these stigmas attached to his name? And I thought that was super odd to see in today's society. Like, I'm shocked, ultimately. I'm taken aback. America definitely took 50 steps backwards during this election. And like I said, we'll have to pay for it. That's something we're going to have to see in the long run, see what that means for not only the health of the strength of the country, but also individual rights. What does that mean for Black people? What does that mean for women? What does that mean for women who are Black and who are working? What does that mean for a Black man? What does that mean for a dollar? And these are things we need to talk about. We don't talk about unequal pay. We don't discuss how Black women are making 68 cents to a white man's dollar, or how a Black man is making 75 cents to a white man's dollar. We're not discussing how redlining and medical racism are things that still exist in the society. We're not talking about going forward and having relations with other races and what that looks like. We're not even talking about Israel and Palestine. We're not talking about the anti-Semitism. We're not talking about the conversation surrounding being, anti-Muslim. But these are all conversations I feel like we as a society should have sat down and had, and really decided what that looked like for our president, because we've seen false promises. We've seen false hope. We've seen, oh, we can do this for you. And then, of course, behind the scenes, we see those same candidates voting against our interests, or doing things or enacting policies or bills that may not affect us in a way we want. So it's just shocking to see. America never ceases to amaze me, but also ceases to always goes forwards to shock me. Um, Man, it seemed like the world stopped on Wednesday morning. I've never sensed such a quietness over America. I mean, even the news cycle wasn't something you hear. Like, I didn't hear anything that kind of shifted from that of the news cycle. And I feel like this was all calculated. Pennsylvania, a swing state that the red the red wave hasn't conquered in almost two elections. It was shocking to see that they were majority red this year, and it makes me feel like the assassination attempt had something to do with it. But these are all things we may never know, right? These are all
Mm-hmm.
things that will also be wiped under as conspiracies or sheet talk, or, woke talk, or whatever, adjectives they give alongside people who notice trends or cycles in the media that may dictate a narrative. But these are things we have to deal with. But I must ask you, VJ, what do you think about the status of the country as a Black man? Do you feel like any of your rights will be implored on, or do you feel like there's a shift in how you view the country? Talk to me. Like, let me know. How do you feel?
I'm feeling like it's just this. I feel cautiously optimistic. I'm not one of these Debbie Downers that's gonna get all down about the health of a country, because America is a capitalist society. It's like
Very true.
the people that make it are the ones that get into the money. If you really sitting around here and letting these policies affect you, then that's on you. But you gotta learn how to work the system and learn how to make the money and go get to the money and go figure out these tax breaks and stuff, and figure out, what we need to do. Because if you sitting around here dwelling on the health of a country, and if it's that bad, get your passport and leave.
Telling you.
Because if it's really that bad, go ahead. Because this ain't like what our ancestors dealt with in the early 1900s. Now I know it's still kind of fucked up, but at least they ain't got dogs being thrown on us, or
Can agree with that.
people putting chemicals in the bleach in our pools and stuff. And I know it's a different evil, but at the end of the day, it's like you just got to find a way to navigate it. Because
Agree.
one thing I realize is money talks in this country,
Yes, it
and
does.
no matter who's in office, they can always get paid off by these billionaires with special interest groups who got millions of dollars to throw around to get their interest pushed and stuff. So I'm not all concerned about it. It's just, yeah, it's sad, but it's not surprising at this point. And also, the one thing that is surprising, I'm not even surprised by how stupid some of these states are in the South, because it's all the states that are like low in the educational rankings, they
Yes,
all went red, and all the states that are high in their education rankings, most of them went blue.
of course.
And also, and it's some things I noticed, and it's also the rural areas. We're gonna hold it down in the city areas. It's these country areas that the where you don't even have places you ain't never heard of, like
Places
where
you don't
all the
stop
baby
when the sun
boomers
go
are.
down.
Pretty much,
Pretty
them
much.
places is what's holding back America as
I
well.
agree.
So also, and Pete, they knew this shit was gonna happen. So I'm just like, let's get it. It is what it is. I'm not about to sit here and cry over spilled milk. And I hope you listeners out there don't sit here and cry over spilled milk. He got elected. Get over it. So what?
I can agree with that, and I agree with that entirely, especially in aspects of, oh, like, being upset, crying, being in this place of being upset. And it's like, yeah, I get it. We're upset. We want to be upset at the people who don't vote. We want to be upset at the people who voted against our interests. But ultimately, we have to be different than the right side, right? I mean, the right side, we talk crap about how they had an insurrection, about how they don't understand and how they're in a cult. I feel like we need to, and I'm saying we because I know in aspects of voting, my demographic is heavily on the left side and, Democrat leaning. But what I want for Democrats ultimately is to be more aware of what it is that you're voting for, and also be more aware of what your local officials are doing. I mean, it doesn't affect us until it affects us, right? I mean, federally, we could always talk about the president, how upset we are about this person or that person becoming president. But at the end of the day, they're a figurehead, right? Like you said, going forward, we have to look at these billion-dollar companies who are funding them. We have to look at these corporations that are in their pocket. And I feel like you said, once you have that peace and that notion that you understand that this is just putting somebody in as a placeholder or somebody in as a placard, then you will understand that we have a lot of work to do in our country, and we have a lot of work to do as citizens, and putting in our request as what we want as citizens in this country. So, I mean, we have to do the work. America definitely has to do the grunt work. Um, my last notion before, we go forward and switch off and, end our conversation, I just wanted to know, what's one thing you're hoping is instilled or is like, or a policy that's enacted for the next 4 years. It can be something beneficial to you, it could be something beneficial to the country, or it could be something that's just in place that can ultimately push us to the area of healing. What's that thing? What do you believe that would be?
I know this is a pipe dream because we got a businessman that's in office right now, and he might not give a damn about it. But I would hope our local lawmakers, our state and local and federal lawmakers, look at the cost of things, the fact that everything is going up. I hope they do something to lower the interest rate, do something to get these bills down or something, because every day it's just getting to be not, you
Life
can't
is not
live
worth
like this.
living.
So
Exactly. Like, I mean, I remember you could go to anywhere, any spot, and get a $10 meal. Now $20 is your meal of the day, you know? I remember when it used to be affordable to travel. Now you don't even want to leave your house without feeling like you have the urge to spend $20 plus, $100 plus. I mean, I remember iced coffee was $2. In some areas in the United States, they still are $2. But I want us to be in a place where we can live comfortably. Like, we can go outside, we can buy groceries and feed our family, we can buy groceries and feed others if we wanted to. I just feel that community and that sense of community is now lacking, now that we have this notion of being entrepreneurs and business savvy and being in business mindsets. We lost the sense of community. And I'm hoping, very similar to your pipe dream, that we can get back to that sense of normalcy in our communities, not only within our race or within our culture, but communities overall, where we live, where we play, where we have our discussions, where we go, fine tune our car, just being in a place where we have community again. That's something I'm hoping for, because I feel like Donald Trump has a rhetoric that shifts us from community, right? It kind of gives the notion of big eyes and little U's. And I want us to shift into more of a thinking process of, this is my brother, this is my sister. I see someone's hurt, I want to help. I see someone's hungry, I want to help. Just being back to that area where we understood what respect was, and ultimately minding our business, because, well, have we gotten nosy over the past 15 years as a country? I mean, America is always nosy. Look at our relations with other countries, but I feel within our home state, we've become more negatory and more selfish to when it comes to others' needs. So that's where the lack of community comes in. But Victor, thank you so much for talking with me today. I appreciate it so much. Is there anything you want to tell the audience, tell the listeners, tell the viewers before logging off, where they can find you, where they can listen to your podcast? Shamelessly plug yourself. I love it.
No problem, no problem. You can follow the Liquor Talk on Instagram at Liquor Talk Podcast. If you want to listen to us we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts at. And also, we are on a National Black God Podcast Network, so go ahead and check them out as well. Liquor Talks wherever, and also content creators, fellow podcasters. If you're looking for a place to come talk, come tell your story, come have good conversation. Come on over to the Liquor Talk. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Victor. And yeah, guys, make sure you stay tuned for any future collabs between the Chantizzy podcast and the Liquor Talk podcast. I think that would be great. Make sure, of course, you're turning post notifications on for any new episodes. And of course, again, Victor, thank you so much for jumping on and discussing the election and giving a male perspective. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's Tizzy time. Make sure you always tune your clock to that time and come have a good listen with us. Come sit down, come talk, come hear other perspectives, and of course, get it on an unedited and unfiltered view. Of course, we're keeping it as straight as possible. No holes, no bars. So I thank you so much, VJ, for coming through. And yeah, stay tuned for any new episodes and, some collabs and creative conversations we have with some other podcasters as well. So thank you so much, Victor. I appreciate it.
Thank you.